Evelyn Park discovered the limits of both grammar and mortality at 3:07 p.m. on a rain-soaked Tuesday, the kind of afternoon that made the city newsroom smell like wet wool and printer toner. She had worked the obituary desk at the Chronicle for 11 years, smoothing final sentences for strangers. She believed, with nearly religious conviction, that well-placed commas offered the dead a dignified exit. That day, the slot editor, Marcus, dropped a manila folder onto her keyboard. "Arthur LeMay," he said, "hardware store owner 59. Copy says heart attack." Evelyn nodded, rolled her ergonomic chair closer, and began the ritual. Verify the funeral home's facts, check the Associated Press style book, trim the family's rambling prose into a crisp paragraph or two. She typed, "Arthur William LeMay, 59, proprietor of LeMay Hardware on Sycamore Street, died Sunday of a heart attack while reorganizing the store's seasonal aisle." She paused, enjoyed the understated irony, death amid plastic snow shovels and garden hoses, then pressed save. Not 30 seconds later, the new content management software inserted a squiggly orange underline beneath heart attack. A tooltip appeared. Possible confusion with car crash suggested change. Evelyn frowned. The developers had claimed the program merely flagged cliches and gendered language. Why would it push for car crash? She clicked ignore and moved on. The orange line refused to disappear. 2 attempts later, she surrendered, triple-clicked heart attack, and typed car crash, promising herself she would switch it back after the article exported to layout. But Marcus had already pulled the page, slapped it into the B section, and sent the plates to print before she could correct it. The next morning, Evelyn trudged past vending machines filled with overnight editions. There was Arthur's photo above the headline, "LeMay, Hardware Icon 59. The cause of death now read, fatal injuries sustained in a single-vehicle crash on Sycamore Street," Evelyn muttered. But the funeral home facts. Then she pushed through the newsroom door and was immediately hailed by reporters trading updates on the tragic accident. "Whole block heard the impact," a city desk intern said. "Apparently his truck plowed into his own storefront." "That's not right," Evelyn interrupted. "Arthur LeMay collapsed in the stockroom. I talked to his niece." Reporters stared. "Collapsing?" the intern said. No, he bled out behind the wheel. There's security footage." Evelyn hurried to her computer, opened the funeral home's website. The obituary she'd proofed yesterday was gone, replaced by a version mentioning a devastating motor vehicle collision. She called the funeral director, was told, politely, that perhaps grief had scrambled her memory. "Mr. LeMay's heart was fine," the director said. Coroner ruled blunt force trauma. She hung up, heartbeat drumming. The room felt slanted, as if every desk had been nudged a degree to the left. Over the next week, 3 more obituaries crossed her desk. A retired librarian, originally said to have succumbed to pneumonia, was posthumously reassigned by the program to carbon monoxide poisoning. A high school coach's aneurysm became an allergic reaction to shellfish. Each time, reality rearranged itself to match the misprint, leaving Evelyn the sole keeper of prior truth. She kept a spiral notebook under her keyboard, documenting discrepancies, though she feared the pages might slide into nonsense overnight. On a Friday evening, alone except for the janitorial crew, she devised an experiment. She reopened the obituary for Ida Morales, a 92-year-old piano teacher whose draft awaited final approval. According to the funeral home, Ida had died peacefully in her easy chair, listening to Chopin. Evelyn highlighted the sentence and typed, "Ida Morales, 92, died while heroically rescuing a neighbor from a kitchen fire, sustaining smoke inhalation injuries." She saved, printed, and tucked the page into her purse. Then, with shaking fingers, she reverted the digital file to its accurate wording, ensuring the erroneous version would never circulate. The next morning, she visited Ida's street in the Mission District. Police tape webbed 2 row houses. Charred siding glistened under firefighters' hoses. A reporter from a rival paper scribbled in a pocket notebook, while an elderly man sobbed. "She pushed me out the door, said the piano could burn, but not me." The reporter asked his name. He answered, "Victor Morales, Ida's nephew." Evelyn staggered back to the bus stop, nausea curling in her gut. An obituary, unpublished, unseen by anyone but her printer, had still seeded a new timeline. She considered psychiatric explanations, stress-induced hallucination, dissociative episodes, folie à deux between her and the CMS algorithm, but buildings did not char themselves. Late that night, she turned to the blank notebook page titled Rules and wrote, 1. Change in text equals change in cause. 2. Publication not required. 3. Scope limited to the deceased, but can endanger others. 4. Memory of prior reality stays with author. The ethical question. She scrawled, underlining it until the paper tore. Evelyn's gaze drifted to a photograph pinned above her monitor. Her younger sister May, who had died 5 years earlier when a drunk driver ran a red light outside Tahoe. The photo captured May's half-smile, forever 26, still teasing Evelyn about soulmate-level coffee snobbery. May's obituary had been written by a freelancer in Reno, the prose clunky but serviceable. Evelyn, paralyzed by grief, hadn't touched it. The drunk driver, Trent Kowalski, served a 4-year sentence and was scheduled for parole next month. The idea rose like a fever, impossible to suppress. If text could bend reality, perhaps May's death could be rewritten to something calmer, painless, maybe even deferred into old age. But every experiment thus far proved the power only affected the dead person's final moments. It didn't resurrect them. Still, other possibilities opened. She could designate an unambiguous medical condition, assign fatal arrhythmia, absolve the driver. She queued up May's archived obituary on the Chronicle server. Her cursor blinked beside struck by a drunk driver. Before she could type, an email notification popped up from Human Resources. Subject, Furlough Potential Editorial Department. Half the staff, including Evelyn, risked reduced hours. She closed the email and stared at May's obituary, her breath hitching. At 2:15 a.m. she typed, May Park, 26, perished in a sudden avalanche while hiking near Donner Pass. Authorities report no other injuries. Avalanche, a natural act, no criminal, no drunk with a second chance at life. She pressed save, printed a copy, shoved it into the notebook. The newsroom light flickered overhead. The CMS flagged nothing. No orange squiggle, no suggestion to swap avalanche for bus accident. Evelyn waited. 15 minutes passed. The city outside was silent except for distant sirens. She opened social media, searched Trent Kowalski. His profile was gone. A jail tracker site listed him as released, sentence completed. The DUI conviction replaced by manslaughter vacated. Another search revealed an obituary. Trent Michael Kowalski, 27, died of an opioid overdose 2 years prior. Evelyn's blood chilled. Her single paragraph had not only reassigned May's fate, but rewritten his entire path. Rule 5, she scribbled. Ripples unpredictable, expand beyond deceased. She closed May's file and slid the notebook into her desk drawer as dawn paled the newsroom's windows. Days blurred. Evelyn worked, slept little, devoured online philosophy forums about determinism. Meanwhile, the Chronicle's budget crisis worsened. Rumors swirled that obituaries would be outsourced to a content farm in Phoenix. Evelyn's job, her proximity to the reality, a bit-in keyboard, might vanish. One afternoon, Marcus called her into his glass cubicle. His tie hung askew, eyes red. Corporate wants engagement metrics. Edgy headlines, clickable stories, even obits. They want, he grimaced, narrative hooks. Evelyn's pulse quickened. You mean something like, dies saving kitten from burning building? Exactly. Family approves, we sell papers, everyone's happy. She walked back to her desk, heart hammering. The company's greed would soon weaponize her accidental discovery, whether she revealed it or not. And if a content farm, ignorant of the danger, started churning mistakes into existence, the world could become an incoherent collage of sensational deaths. She decided, destroy the mechanism. But the CMS software lived on remote servers. Uninstalling it locally meant nothing. The true lever, she realized, was language itself and her role as operator. Only she, so far, generated the changes. She could retire, refuse to type another epitaph, Yet corporate would hire replacements, maybe interns. What if the power lay dormant until someone with her particular temperament or guilt-stitched history sat at the keys? She couldn't be sure. She considered writing an obituary for the ability itself. Here lies the anomalous causal link between obituary text and physical reality. Deceased of natural entropy, may it rest in peace. But who would the subject be? The power wasn't a person. Obituaries adhered to form. She needed a death she could plausibly report. She closed her eyes and pictured the blank notebook. Rule 3, scope limited to the deceased. If she could declare herself dead fictionally, would the world obey, erasing both her body and the dangerous knowledge? Or worse, leave her alive but seal her throat, an existential gag order? A saner solution pulled at her. Anonymity. If the power followed the words, not the author, then maybe she could bury it under layers of obscurity. A final obituary, so mundane and forgettable it would never be read, yet internally structured to sabotage its own effect. Monday, 4:58 a.m. She brewed coffee strong enough to blister the tongue, opened a blank file and began. Georgina Doe, 87, died Thursday of acute punctuation. She paused. Acute punctuation? Nonsense, yet grammatically distinct. Cause of death that could not exist in the material world? She added. Doctors at Mercy General cited an irreversible semicolon lodged between the aorta and inferior vena cava, inducing catastrophic grammatical seepage. Her nerve wavered. Would the cosmos conjure bodily semicolons? She deleted the line. She started over. Georgina Doe, 87, expired precisely at the moment language ceased to describe her. If description failed, maybe reality would shrug. Still too abstract. She slammed her palms against the desk. She thought of Ida's burned house, of May on an imaginary snowfield. Every edit had been concrete, plausible within the laws of physics. The mechanism seemed to crave specificity, like a cosmic copy editor rejecting flights of fancy. She needed a self-negating sentence, factual, yet impossible. New attempt. Georgina Doe, 87, died peacefully, and in so doing eliminated the necessity for further deaths. She read it aloud. If enacted, no one else would ever die. The earth would choke on immortality, unusable. Her reflection in the dark monitor seemed to stare back with May's eyes, pleading. A sob punched from her chest. She couldn't outsmart the thing. What she could do, perhaps, was bend it toward mercy, in small, careful doses. Choose understated, painless exits for future subjects. Counter corporate sensationalism with gentle truths. But even gentle lies were still lies, and each would erode the authentic stories families wanted preserved. She needed external counsel, someone unswayed by newsroom cynicism. She chose her retired journalism professor, Winston Hale, who once taught her that the first draft of history demanded humility. That afternoon she rang his landline. He answered with the crackly warmth of old vinyl. She arranged a visit, brought pastries, and, after stuttering through small talk, confessed everything. Hale listened, brow furrowed beneath shaggy brows. When she finished, he said, "You recall Borg Haste, the Garden of Forking Paths? Infinite possibilities, each branch real. You've stumbled into a pruning shear." "I don't want to prune anything," she whispered. He poured more tea. "Then write the truth, always the truth. Truth is the anchor that holds our timeline steady." "But mistakes happen. Then correct them. Immediately." She left his house breathing easier, until an email pinged from Marcus. A Reggie rewrite. Obituary for Councilman Reggie Ortiz, just died of pancreatic cancer. But Marcus wanted a nobler frame. Evelyn requested details. Marcus insisted. Ortiz's widow approved, emphasizing service, not sickness. The CMS flagged pancreatic cancer as potentially distressing, suggested after a courageous battle or tragic accident. Marcus liked tragic accident. Clickbait. Evelyn stared at the screen. If she refused, Marcus might route it to another editor, whose ignorance could yield catastrophe. If she complied incorrectly, same risk. She opened the source document. Reginald Reggie Ortiz, 68, died Tuesday of pancreatic cancer. Her fingers hovered. She decided on surgical precision. Reginald Ortiz, 68, died Tuesday after a brief illness, surrounded by family. Neutral, accurate, humane. She hit save. Orange underline. Possible cliché. Suggest automobile cliché. She clicked ignore. The orange returned. She overrode the software, forced the paragraph to plain text, stripped metadata, locked the file. Then she sprinted to layout, handed the page to Marcus in person. Looks thin, he complained. It's correct, she said. The paper went to press. The next morning, Ortiz's widow called, voice trembling gratitude. The obituary was perfect. No reality shift, no alternate headlines about highway carnage. Evelyn exhaled. She had, for once, guarded the truth. Rule 6, she wrote, power requires both error and acquiescence. If she stood firm, if other editors did likewise, reality held. That night she composed an anonymous tip to the software developers. Reports of serious factual corruption traced to their latest update. She attached fabricated crash logs and memory leaks, enough to trigger an emergency rollback. Within 48 hours, the AI module was disabled company-wide, out of an abundance of caution. Orange squiggles vanished from her screen. The cosmos, relieved of algorithmic meddling, seemed to settle like silt in clear water. Still, Evelyn knew human typos could produce the same havoc. The power wasn't in code. It resided in the thin membrane between word and world, accessible through negligence. She resolved to police every sentence, teach interns the sanctity of exactitude. After work, she visited May's grave for the first time since the avalanche revision. The headstone read, 1990-2016. Beloved sister, no mention of cause. Evelyn knelt, pressed her palm to cool granite. I tried to fix it, she whispered. I don't know what's real anymore, but I remember you. In the distance, traffic hummed, ordinary, relentless. No avalanches, no drunks. Just the living negotiating right-of-ways. Evelyn rose, smoothing soil from her knees. She had stories to guard, histories to curate. The obituary desk awaited a fulcrum where commas could topple universes. And somewhere between the letters she would carve a narrow corridor of honesty, guiding the dead home without bending the road behind them. Evelyn rose. On her road the common, a road behind the